And we are resuming the recording. This time we can see the entire screen. Log in as user. The user account on the live DVD distribution has a password of user again. So just type that in and it will start up the graphical user interface. And because this is the first time we run it on this system, it will also ask me about the configuration of the screen and other things. And there you go, just use the default configuration like that. And now I'm ready to go. What I want to do is to make sure that the first thing I want to do is to burn the live image onto the USB, quote-unquote USB thumb drive, the 2 GB USB thumb drive. To do that, I'm going to use a terminal. And what we want to do is to make sure that we know which device is the 2 GB device. There are several ways to do this. You can look through the DMESG messages. Let me go through this method first because you may not always have the GUI to help you out. So when you type DMESG pipe less, we are looking at the startup messages of the system. And in this case, what we want to do is to look up the SD devices, and you can see that we have several devices. The 2 GB device is in fact SDB, so that's good because now we know which device is SDB. That's my thumb drive, pretend thumb drive in my case, that will store the image. We can also tell which one is my CD-ROM drive. The CD-ROM drive is right here, and it is going to be I think it's going to be SDC, but there's also an easy way to find that out. If I type mount, it will tell me how various mount points of the system is mounted. So when you look at this, you can see the live image is mounted from SR0, and that's telling me that my /device/SR0 is my CD-ROM drive. So now I'm ready to run DD. But if you want to run DD, you have to change to the root user first. You use the command SU to switch to super user. Press the enter key and then enter the password. The password of the root user is ball, B-A-L-L. And now I'm root because you can tell that I just switched from user to the root user right here. And now I can use the DD command to specify the input is the device that is storing the DVD that has the image that I'm running from right now, which is SR0. The output device is the entire drive of SDB, not SDB1, which is a single partition, but I want the entire device SDB to store the ISO image. And then I can specify BS, which is block size, to be 4K, and then press the enter key. This will take a little bit of time because we are working with an emulated PC here. So what I want to do is to find out exactly how long this is going to take, or what is the actual transfer speed. I use PS to take a look at other processes, but I'm not interested in other processes. I'm only interested in the process, which is a program in execution that was started up with DD as a command name. As the command, so I use dash uppercase C to filter and only display the processes with a application name of DD, and the process ID is 3419. So now I say kill, which is really just sending a signal to the process, minus USR1, which is a user1 signal, and I'm sending it to the process with a process ID of 3419. Operation not permitted because the process is owned by root or the administrator, and I'm only a user. So I have to switch my user to root first before I run this again. Kill -USR1 3419, and if I switch back to the other window, you can see that it is reporting that I have copied about 300 megabytes right now, and the write speed is 4 megabytes per second, which is basically what you can expect from a USB thumb drive that is attached to a USB 2 bus. USB 3 is a bit faster, but most of the time the speed is actually limited by the device itself, so there's really not much you can do to get around that problem. And this is going to take a little bit of time because everything is actually emulated on your PC, because you're going to run it. You're going to run this part on a native PC. It should not take nearly as long as what is taking me right now. As we are waiting for this, we can also kind of just play around a little bit. Inside the live the CD, inside the live ISO environment, you can also just kind of check out the other stuff that we have here. We have some kind of interesting utility programs installed already. Zerno is a pretty interesting one. It's kind of like a PDF reader, but it also allows you to mark up the PDF that it opens. I think it's a great way to take notes, when you have to deal with PDF files. Under development, we have code blocks for people who want to program in C++, and then we have Composer, which is an HTML editor. Under education, we have Stellarium, which is a great program. If you like astronomy, you have to try it out. And then we have Python Whiteboard. This is an interesting program. You have to set up a Wii mode controller, like for the Nintendo Wii, and you can use that and also a light pen to make an electronic whiteboard. It's really quite interesting. Under games, we have FreeCraft, which is a knockoff of Warcraft. It is compatible with the map files intended for Warcraft. So it's, it can be interesting. Under graphics, we have Document Viewer, which is our PDF viewer. The GIMP is a kind of Photoshop-like software. You can use it to edit, pictures and bitmaps. Hugging is interesting. It's very interesting if you like photography. It allows you to stitch multiple pictures into a big one, and also at the same time do all sorts of correction. So it's a really interesting program if you have time to play with it. Inkscape is a freehand drawing program, and it can be used to create artwork that is scalable, which is quite useful. Draw is about the same thing, except it belongs to the LibreOffice suite. This is an image viewer. Scribus is a desktop publishing software. You can use it to publish small brochures and stuff like that. UFRAW is a standalone program. There's also a plugin into the GIMP. It is a utility to let the GIMP import from raw files from different types of digital cameras. Once again, if you like photography, this is going to be quite useful. XPDF is yet another PDF viewer. It has the same purpose as Document Viewer. Under Internet, we have FileZilla, which is a great tool if you want to transfer files between computers. Google Chrome is Google Chrome. IceViso is basically Firefox. Composer is an HTML editor. If you like PuTTY in Windows, now you can use PuTTY also in Linux. But in Linux, all you have to do is to start up a terminal and then use the command SSH to make a connection. So the PuTTY utility program is not actually needed in this case. WICD is a network manager. It's actually up and running right now, but since I don't have a Wi-Fi card, it's not really going to be that useful. I'm using the emulated wired interface at this point. Wireshark is a network sniffing tool. If you want to understand how some of the networking protocols work, Wireshark is a really good tool to do that. X11VNC allows you to export what you're seeing on this particular screen using VNC so that you can remotely control a computer. Under multimedia, we have all the usual stuff, the mixer GUI and the mixer itself. These are for controlling the volume of your speaker and the sound and stuff like that. We have Audacity, which is an audio recording software. You can also do a lot of post-processing. Movie player, as the name implies, is just a media player. And for that, it's probably better to use SM Player 2 because I think it has better compatibility. It has better compatibility with most file formats. And then under Office, we have the typical dictionary, PDF viewer, FreeMind, which is a kind of interesting tool. And then we have the LibreOffice suite. Under others, these are really just specific files for myself because I designed printed circuit boards, and these are the utility programs for that purpose. And also there's a USB view, which allows you to look at the USB devices that are currently connected to the device. This is really taking a lot of time, so let me double check and see if the process is still active. And it is still active, it's almost done, but you can see the write speed has dropped down to 3.1 megabytes. I understand why it's doing that, because as we are writing to SDB, the matching QCOW2 file is actually being changed and increasing in length as we need more space on that particular image file, and that's why it's getting slower and slower as we make the file bigger and bigger. But it's almost done. I know doing this is not going to make it go faster, but I just want to see how much of the image it has copied. It's up to 1.5 gigabytes now, so we should be pretty close to done at this point. Alright, come on, let's go. 1.6. I hope it's not going to copy the entire device and not just the part that has the ISO file. Well, we can always check that by using DMESG and look up SR0. And here it reports this is a uniform CD drive. It doesn't. Oh, okay, the other part is done already. So great, this is excellent. So what I'll do is I'm going to shut down the virtual machine and then restart it. But this time I'm going to restart it by using booting to the 2 gigabyte thumb drive instead of the CD-ROM, just to make sure that that particular method works. Okay, so we shut down the virtual machine, and when you're doing this on the physical machine, you're actually shutting down the physical box itself. At the very end, I think it will pop the DVD out from its tray so that you can retrieve the DVD. So go ahead and pick up the DVD from the tray before you press the enter key to restart the system. So press the enter key and that should turn off everything. I'm back to my emulator at this point. And then I'm going to restart it, but this time I will change my boot device to that's a interesting one. Let me see if I can specify C. I think I need an option to be able to pick what device I boot from, and there is a way to do it. I just cannot remember whether it's just that. Nope. Okay. Time to do a man page. Man KVM, and look for dash boot. And we can see, okay, it's menu equals on. That's what I need to use to specify it. Also, I can specify the order. Okay, let's see how we can specify the order. Network, and then C. That's not what I want. I think I need to turn on menu. So menu equals on needs to be turned on with a comma to separate it from all the other stuff. So let's try that. Dash boot. And I cannot remember what I just saw. That is really bad. Okay. menu equals on. Okay, there we go. Like so. And you don't have to do this step here because you're gonna do it on the physical machine, and you don't have to deal with this. Dash boot comma menu equals on. Okay, dash boot comma menu equals on. And it's complaining that it's not a valid option. Oh, right here, there's no comma, but there's a space. Alright. I read the syntax wrong. So I have to press the F12 key in time. Let me just move this up back to where it was so we can see better. And now I can select what I want to boot from. I don't want to boot from number 6 anymore because I want to boot it from the second hard drive, which is the one that has 2 GB. So I type 2, and now it's booting from the USB thumb drive that only has 2 GB of storage. Once again, I don't really need to specify whether it's persistent or not because I have not set up a persistent partition anyway. So picking either one would do fine. In other words, this is equivalent of you starting up a physical machine without the DVD in the tray, but you plug in the USB thumb drive that has the live image burned to it. And it should give you almost exactly the same message when it's starting up. It's not going to be exact because it doesn't use the CD-ROM drive to supply the image anymore, and it's going to use the thumb drive, the 2 GB thumb drive, to supply the boot image. Alright, we have the GUI up and running again. And then you log in as user again, and it will ask me about configuring XFCE4 again, because everything that I did before was actually not saved. All I did in the previous the previous virtual machine was to burn the ISO image onto the USB thumb drive device. Alright, now that we have that taken care of, the next thing we want to do is to format the persistent drive and then start to use it. So we go to application menus and go to settings, and then we go down to gparted. Now remember, this step you only have to do it once, so everything up to here is a one-time thing. We only have to do it once. The password of root is ball, B-A-L-L, and then we start up the partition editing software, and it's going to complain about SDB. That's fine, just ignore that. Okay, you don't have to do anything about it. SDA is my internal hard drive. I don't want to do anything to damage it. SDB is my image, so I don't want to mess with that either. It is SDC that will become my persistent drive in this case, so I pick SDC. It is not even formatted at this point. I go to partition and I go to device. I have to first create a partition table and going to apply the changes. Invalid partition table of SDB, just go ahead and ignore that. And now on SDC, I can now create a single partition. So right click again, type new, select new, primary partition, file system is extension 3, and then the label is live-rw. So once again, at this point, I cannot use live read write yet, but later on, once I fix the startup script, we'll be able to make this whole process kind of more automatic. So make sure you use a label of live-rw. click add, nothing is actually being done at this point. Nothing is going to be done until I click apply applications, apply all operations. And this will take a long time because I'm doing this on a virtual device, so the format process will take a bit of time. And as you know, this is going to take quite a bit of time. I'm going to switch back to I'm kind of locked into the virtual machine right now, and once I switch out, I can go back to my browser, which is overlapping the virtual machine, so that I can display the browser when the virtual machine is busy doing its thing. So what we want to do is to go back to the course, and I'm just going to quickly go over this particular note again, because server not found. Great. This is my host machine not being able to find the Moodle server, which basically means my Wi-Fi connection is not working at this point. So let me see what I should do. WICD-GDK. I'm going to start up my Wi-Fi Network Manager software. And for some reason it dropped the connection to my Wi-Fi router, so I'm just reconnecting it. Alright, it is connected again, so let's go back to Moodle. There we go. Let's see. Let's switch back and forth between QEMU and the window. Oh, it's already done. It's actually a little bit faster than doing it on an actual USB thumb drive. I'm kind of surprised. So we click close, and invalid partition table. This is complaining about SDB again, which is my which is the thumb drive that contained the Debian live image. We'll just go ahead and ignore that. And at this point, what I'll do is I can do some of the commands inside the GUI, but the rest I have to do it outside of the GUI. The one part that I can do inside the GUI is to mount the drive. There are two ways to do it. Okay, let me show you the easy way. You can see live-rw appears as an icon on the desktop. If you just double click on this thing, you have to supply the root password, which is ball, B-A-L-L, and then press authenticate. It's going to do the mounting already, so that makes it very easy to mount a drive. But I can't really make any changes to it right now. I suppose I can, but it's better to do it inside a command line interface, so that we are not going to make any changes, or we are not going to run into any potential problems. To do this on an actual physical machine, what you need to do is right now at this point type Control Alt F1 to get into the text console. I cannot do it because if I do Control Alt F1, the host operating system is going into the text mode, which is not what I want to do. So that's why it is a little bit convoluted compared to your approach, because I have to type Control Alt 1. Oops, Control Alt. I cannot remember the key sequence to switch into the console of the virtual machine itself. Control Alt 2. Nope. Yep, Control Alt 2 gets me into the monitor of QEMU, and I can say send key Control Alt F1 Press the enter key, and then I need to switch back, which is Control Alt 1, and now we are back to the console. The text console. When you do this on the physical machine, you should see the same stuff, but probably in a very small font if you have a relatively large monitor. So log in as root again. The password is ball. And the first thing we want to do is to shut down the GUI. So we type /etc/init.d/gdm3 stop. That will stop the display manager, which will also basically disable the GUI. The next thing we want to do is to copy everything in /home onto the drive that we have mounted. So the first thing is to make sure it is still mounted, and it is. SDC1, which is my persistent drive or persistent device, is still mounted on /media/live_rw. So that is still mounted. And then we can do a man CP, a manual to look up the manual page of CP, and see if there's a way to preserve ownership of files. So I just look for owner, and right here it says right here, -p will preserve ownership, mode, and timestamp. So I should use that option. So now we specify CP, which is copy. -r, which is recursive. I'm not just copying a single file. I want to copy the entire directory structure. -p, which means I want to preserve ownership of files as well as timestamps and whatnot. And this is where I'm copying from, which is /home. And I'm copying that to /media/live-rw, which is the destination. And then you just press the enter key, and then we can double check, /media/live-rw has those files. And if I want to double check and make sure the ownership is set correctly, I'll go to the user folder and make sure that user owns this particular subfolder, and it does. So I'm all set up again to restart the GUI at this point. /etc/init.d/gdm3 start, in this case, will restart the GUI using the mounted drive already, the drive that is mounted. This step, unfortunately, you have to do it every single time. In other words, you have to switch to the console, log in as root. The copy part you don't have to do, but you have to do the mounting of the drive every single time, and it's going to be a hassle. So now I can restart the GUI to finish up the rest of the steps. And this is going to be a little bit slow because I'm going to run a virtual machine inside a virtual machine eventually. Alright, so this is your physical machine. It is a virtual machine on my desktop, but from your perspective, you should be doing this on a physical machine. So you go to Application menu, and then you start the terminal emulator, or you can just click this icon here. It would do exactly the same thing. And then this time we can do everything as user. We don't have to do it as root anymore because we are just setting up the image file that we'll use as the hard drive of a virtual machine. So now we do the same thing. We say QEMU-IMG. I think KVM-IMG works too. It doesn't really matter. And then we say create-F, which is the format, and we want to use QCOW2. We want to name this particular file. I don't know. Let's try ciss342.qcow2. And then we can specify the size. I think 2 gigabytes should be fine. This is where we will install a small version of Linux. Okay, we create a file, everything looks good, and here comes the magical part. I am already running this inside the virtual machine. You'll be running this on the physical machine. So from your perspective, it's nothing magical at all. But since I'm running this inside a virtual machine already, I'm actually now starting to run a virtual machine inside another virtual machine. I don't really need that much memory. 256k megabytes of memory is more than sufficient because I only allocate 1 gig for the entire system. So I'm using 256 for this particular virtual machine. I have to specify, before I do this, I have to type mount to see where the live image is mounted to. So you look up this list here and you want to look for live /live /image, and it is still mounted on the CD-ROM device instead of the USB thumb drive. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll just do it the same way here. So we'll have to say kvm -m 256. That's set up how much RAM we're going to use, and then we specify dash CD-ROM, and it maps to /device/SR0. And then we specify the hard drive or the drive image, and in this case it's HDA, and it maps to the file that we just created, which is ciss342.qcow2. And then we specify where we want to boot from. We're going to boot from the CD-ROM drive because the installer is on the CD-ROM drive. And then we press the enter key. No accelerator found. Fail to initialize. Okay, I have to make it so that it does not look for the accelerator, because when I'm inside an emulator, it doesn't, there's no accelerator available. Alright, so we'll go ahead and man kvm, and we'll look for the word accelerator. Alright, so we want to specify and we just have to supply a property, and also we have to specify a name. Accel equals, there are 3 types of accelerator. It has KVM, Zen, or TCG, and I believe the default is actually not TCG. The default is actually KVM. Okay, so we have to pick one of these. Dash machine, and then we can use dash machine ? To list all the different machines. So KVM dash machine ? And we can look at all of these. PC should be fine. Alright, so we'll go ahead and start the entire command again. This time then we specify machine PC, Accel equals TCG. Press the enter key, and voila, I am now running a virtual machine inside another virtual machine. It's going to be slow. Now we go to the installer part of the CD. Press the enter key, and now we are running Linux inside Linux. And from my perspective, it's Linux inside Linux inside Linux, because my host operating system of my physical box is Linux already. The outer part of this, running Debian Live, is running Linux, and the installer itself, which is a virtual machine inside the Debian Live virtual machine, is also Linux based. So now we actually have Linux running on top of Linux running on top of Linux, which I think is pretty cool that we can do that. Alright, the installer is almost there. It's just initializing everything. And it is awfully slow, because each level of emulation adds quite a bit of overhead. It's still kind of spiffy, but not nearly as spiffy as if I run this natively. But since I have to record, since I want to record everything, this is really the best way to do it, because it emulates what you should be seeing on your physical machine. Alright, it's getting there. Remember the host name, you'll just change it to your last name, or your last name plus a first initial. Domain name, leave it blank because we are not connecting this to any real domain. We want to select the mirror, the United States is fine. The default server is fine too, but you can always pick something else, but I'm just going to pick the default server. There's no proxy server that we are using, so just press the enter key. And the rest is basically what we saw earlier in the class, except in this case it will take a little bit longer because I specified an 8 no, it's still a 2 GB drive, so it will be a little bit longer because I'm running it inside the virtual machine instead of just being inside the virtual machine. So I'll probably cut off parts of the screen recording when we get to the part where we're just waiting for the encryption to be done. Even this part here is really quite boring because there's no interaction on my part. But we'll just keep the recording going because this part doesn't take nearly as long as the other part. All of these so-called modules that we just saw, a module in Linux is basically a device driver in Windows. So it's basically retrieving over the network from the Debian server those drivers for the various devices. It's preparing itself for partitioning the hard drive so that you can install the system on those particular partitions. And right now what we are seeing are the components of the Partition Manager. Each one of these that we are seeing is either a particular type of device or a file system. Almost every blah 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 fs is a file system in Linux. And now it's downloading some of the Debian files for various utility like setting up the user and other things. And now that everything is downloaded, it's just completing the configuration, and then it's all done. Pick a password for root. So this time, because this really is my own virtual machine, I can pick just a root password that I can remember. Full name of the new user, I'm just going to use my full name and use my first name as username for this account. Okay, press the enter key and then once again specify a password. Now it is a bad idea to use the same password for root and also for the end user, because you want to make sure that in case someone overlook your shoulder and find out what your user password is, that won't work for when people try to log in as root. And we pick the time zone, which is Pacific. We went through all this stuff in the class already, so this is for the most part just a repeat review of what we talked about in the class. Alright, so it found the hard drives, and it is a matter of time to get it installed. It's retrieving some additional packages for LVM and encrypted LVM. Now, given that I'm running this, as a virtual machine inside the virtual machine, and the physical box is really just a Q. I think it's a Q6600 quad-core processor. It's one of the very first quad-core processor from Intel. This is actually running at a decent speed. Just like what we talked about in the class, we want to use guided, use the entire disk and set up encrypted LVM. If you go for manual, it's really a lot of hassle, but it does give you a lot more options. Like you can set up software RAID or underneath LVM and then do all the other things. I have used software RAID in Linux for many years. As far as stability goes, it's really quite good, but what you're losing is performance. Okay, now we are going to specify whether we want all files in one partition, just like what I talked about in the class. As a beginning setup, and this is the focus of this class is security, and not how to use a partition effectively. And this whole thing is going to be encrypted anyway, so we just put all files in one partition, and that should be fine. That should be fine. Now, why would anyone try to use multiple partitions and one partition for one mount point of the file system? Well, there are good reasons why people would want to do that. Let me just kind of finish this step here, and when we get to the watch paint dry stage, then I can kind of go through some of the logic why people want to set up different partitions or different volumes, and one for each important mount point of the system. Alright, so this is the part where we have to wait a long time. I'm going to just finish up what I talked about earlier, why we want to put a mount point on a specific volume in the system. The rationale is kind of like this. If you want to back up a system, different partitions or different volumes or different parts of the file system may require a slightly different method of backing up. And also the mounting part can be slightly different too. For instance, the /usr subtree of the directory tree typically is a read-only thing. So unless you're root and you want to update the system, /usr for the most part can be mounted as read-only. Well, that means you can, if you put it onto its own volume, you can specify when /usr is mounted that it is mounted as a read-only partition. So that way, if you mount it as read-only, even root cannot accidentally install or erase something, because you have to, even as root, you have to remount the partition or the volume as read-write before proceeding. So from that perspective, you have the option of changing the backup strategy of these volumes. The other thing that can be handy when you put different mount points onto different volumes is when you want to add a new hard drive or do things a little bit differently, it gives you an option of quickly moving a particular volume from one hard drive to another hard drive, or just different devices. It's good for containing this sort of thing. You might want to /var is a volume or mount point typically for database files and web server files and so on and so forth. So if you purchase a higher performance hard drive, so that certain operations can be faster on your system, you can now quickly, easily, move that particular volume for /var from your slower hard drive to the faster hard drive. Now you have to update a few files to tell your system that that particular mount point has changed onto a different device, but it's still a relatively easy thing to do. and you can now reap the benefits of having a faster hard drive for the database store for the database application. So what I'll do right now, we are really just watching paint dry at this point. It's just erasing the hard drive, and refilling it with random bits. So I will stop the recorder at this point. When it is time to start the recorder again, I'll go ahead and start it again. So this presentation is broken up into several portions because of that.